This is part 3 in an upgrade series on my 2022 Royal Enfield Himalayan. So far in part 1, I updated the luggage racks, the crash bars, the top case, and the GPS mount, among other things. In part 2, I upgraded the exhaust to a full Delkevic Exhaust system. In part 3, I will be updating the handlebar and controls, including a ProTaper SE bar and Barkbusters. Why am I upgrading these things? There are several reports of the stock bar bending if the bike gets dropped off-road. I already have a ProTaper SE handlebar from a previous bike build. I want Barkbusters to protect the controls and my hands and everything if I do go trail riding or the bike does drop. Royal Enfield, if you're watching, a quick note, this is a wonderful motorcycle. I really want to ask why you chose to make this handlebar silver. Please make that black. Paint it black. Paint it black.
So there's nothing quite like having your tools all laid out on the wall for you. I know a lot of people like to keep them in cabinets or drawers, but for me, just having them at the ready is so nice. So I get started by removing the bolt out of the bar end weight, and that is a threaded bar. The stock bar is a threaded bar, so this will come right out. And then don't forget to take your mirrors off. I have the Ram ball mount mirrors, so I don't actually have to take these ball mounts off. I can leave them on the perch where they rest. So there's an 8mm bolt front and back on this brake mount perch. Loosen those up, pull them out, and then that brake mount comes all the way off. Oh yeah, don't forget to cover up your tank. I use an old motorcycle jacket to do that, but you could use a blanket or something similar. So your brake has come off, and now the kill switch has 2 Phillips screws. You can unscrew from underneath. Once you've disconnected the throttle cable, the throttle tube will easily slide off the bar. So starting on the other side, there's a 10mm bolt on the clutch perch. And then I had a little bit of trouble with this grip on the side. I realized I could have just taken a razor and cut it off, but I was hoping to reuse it. It is glued on the stock bar, so I went ahead and started disconnecting the headlight and turn signal assembly. That's also where the choke cable is connected, so be careful to remove that. There's a little piece that sits inside this assembly. I dropped mine. It just goes down in the bottom. So here I continue working on the grip, and finally, eureka. So now I'm going to start loosening the 4 bolts on the handlebar clamp. A lesson learned for me is that Royal Enfield likes to use a lot of red Loctite on these bolts. I actually broke one off and had to replace the upper yoke of the triple tree. So don't make that mistake. You may need to add a little heat to these bolts to get them to come off the first time. So now we should be able to bump the handlebar off of that mount and carefully remove the clutch lever perch. There we go. So we've got our parts laid out here. I did need to remove a little bit of material from the end of the ProTaper handlebar. It was too large in diameter for the clutch perch to slide easily on there, but once removing a little bit of material and sanding it down, it goes right on with no problem. You may have noticed in previous parts of the video that I had rocks risers planned for this build, and while I did like the way they brought the bar closer to me and made the riding position feel a little more put together, there was not enough room on the clutch cable to make them work. So I had to take the rocks risers off and stick with the standard bar clamp. It works just fine. I just wanted the bars to come a little bit closer to me. Maybe I'll add a smaller set of risers in the future. Do be sure to get the bar evenly spaced when you're installing it. So we get the clutch perch tightened back down. I'll put that insert inside the turn signal assembly, which also includes the choke. So it's a little delicate to get all that put back together just the right way. And moving back over to the throttle side of the handlebar, we're going to go ahead and attach the brake perch with those 2 8mm bolts. You may have also noticed that these are slightly different grips on that throttle tube there. I had planned heated grips, but it did not go very well. So I'll have to do the heated grips also on a later day. Just make sure you're working that throttle cable into the tube the right way, reconnect the two Phillips screws on the bottom, and then you can tighten down the brake perch, making sure that you've got plenty of room to compress the brake. Now we're going to move on and put the grip on the left-hand side. It's just a slide-on grip. Some people like glue. I don't. Choose your own path. Now we're going to install the Barkbusters. This is what the left-hand side looks like when it's complete. I did find that there's a little bit of bump on the windscreen, but it's not enough to deter me from riding that way. So we take this clamp. I leave that front section a little bit loose when I attach it so that I've got room to adjust the bar. So we just go ahead and slide those bolts in there. Now, because the bar that I chose is hollow inside and not threaded, I'm going to use that expansion sleeve that comes with the Barkbusters. So go ahead and pre-assemble that before putting it on the bike, and that makes it where I'm not trying to fiddle around and try to get that threaded inside the handle. So I connect that bracket that we placed on the handlebar earlier with the included bolt. I do wish the Barkbusters would offer in a anodized black, but it's silver. So tighten that down, and then we have our Barkbuster basically ready to go. We're just going to tighten down all the bolts, making sure that it's positioned where it's not interfering with the controls. So now we're wrapping up the build. I'm going to tighten everything down. We're going to make sure the Barkbusters are where they need to be, that none of the controls are interfered with. I'm going to get my mirrors put back on and get ready for an initial test ride. I will say that this build was pretty frustrating at points with the rock risers and the heated grips not going the way I wanted it to. You can probably notice in the intro that I had to cut a few things out because I had additional pieces that I wanted to include in the build. But for now, let's get this thing out for a test ride, let you guys see it in action. I will tell you, I really like the way it turned out. Let's get on the road.
Yeah, so here we are on the Himalayan. I got to tell you, this build was frustrating at basically every step of the way. What seemed like it should have been a simple handlebar update turned into one pain in the neck after another. Struggling to find neutral. I have spent more time on this project than I ever thought I would. I do think it's worth it as a way to prevent the handlebar from bending or anything like that when out on the trail. It just, just little annoyances all along the way. The final one being, and this is a word of caution to anybody who does this, make sure that your throttle returns the right way when you've got this end on right here. You can notice that I want the bar ends on, but I really need longer bolts down here in the end. So I'm gonna get some longer bolts, and I had to add some washers into that area there to give it a little spacing because it was pressing it up against it, and when I would open the throttle it would lock it open. The other thing I would call out is, if this is kind of normal on any motorcycle, when you do a handlebar change, is you want to get on flat and then give a full lock. Make sure that you're not obstructed in any way. Make sure your clutch is not engaging. So if we go full lock left, I do get a little bump up there on the windscreen on the GPS bar mount. I get a little bit of bump there. I don't get any residual throttle increase. Sometimes your throttle will get stuck there. So I don't get any clutch pull. So if I'm in first, it doesn't start disengaging the clutch at all. I would check both of those things if you're doing a handlebar install. And then I'm gonna get this longer bolt so I can get this bar input on. That always bugs me. Like I was able to tighten it up so that it's relatively, I didn't have any slack in the throttle, but the fact that moves back and forth that 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch really grinds my gears. But that's a $5,000 bike. What are you going to do? This bar is, I think it's 4 millimeters higher, but the sweep is not as far back on the handles. So it's kind of a net even. But I do like the black bar better. I do think and I know it's a stronger bar. I hope this video has helped you decide on how you might want to do your own Himalayan handlebar build or your own motorcycle handlebar build. If you've watched this far, I hope that you would consider subscribing. I have several other updates that I'd like to do with the Himalayan and share with you guys, and moto camping trips. I've got my Interceptor, my Royal Enfield Interceptor videos coming up, as well as the Honda Navi. So until then, ride safe. Oh yeah, I gotta clean all that up.